Hi, this is Chuck Wolf, and welcome to a very special episode of Place Parts, episode 4. Not only is it snowing in Newbury, Berkshire, England, United Kingdom, but we have a very special guest, Richard Karn, the actor, with whom we're going to discuss many aspects of home repair, and continue with the themes from our first 3 episodes about place, including our expectations of place, memories embedded within place, and ways to improve place as we emerge from the pandemic in changing times.
There is no starting over. It's just going forward.
Hey, I have been doing this set of YouTube videos called Place Parts to promote my book and try and simplify the ideas, which are actually around tools to regenerate the urban environment. And especially in these times, remembering that this whole COVID thing has accelerated trends that are already in place, like
being staying in your little community.
Yeah, exactly, and being very, very careful how we insert global ideas or new things and look for ways to regenerate given climate change and so on and so forth. You know, in the back of my mind was tool time. And now you guys, of course, have assembly required, which I'd like to hear more about. But then all that stuff on Facebook happened with our homeroom classmates and this, you know, and
yes,
and you said
that was really interesting, wasn't it? It was very really interesting that most of our homeroom chimed in.
Yeah, and you know, you aptly pointed out that our homeroom teacher, Miss Ingle, who we thought was the oldest person in the world, but I think we're older than she was then. But
and she taught the oldest language, you know. So
yeah, she was
I should say one of the oldest languages.
Yeah.
Dead maybe.
Dead maybe, but you properly pointed out. You said, well, you know, she called us Ingle Saxons, right? And then and then you said, Chuck, now you're in the land of Anglo-Saxons. And so that got me full circle, because like I said, I was thinking about you with place parts. That's like tool time. And then I've been thinking, you know, a lot of the applied people out there talk about tools to repair the urban fabric and place-making tools. And I've actually thought, when I've been at conferences and so on and so forth, we need Al Borland here to, you know, talk about a new tool to repair the urban fabric, or to demonstrate it. And
well, it's not a new tool. It is our brain, and it's how we imagine it. You know, that's our biggest tool. I have a friend who's a builder, contractor, and he works with Frank Gehry. And Frank Gehry does these amazing, you know, complexes, the Disney Music Hall and a bunch of things like that. But what Leonard does as his chief of staff is he creates the space, the usable space, and then Frank does the code outside. He creates, you know, everything around the usable space, so you don't end up with rooms that just don't work very well, you know. Kind of like, you know, in New York, you got the Flatiron Building, and in Seattle, you had a couple of those kind of triangle buildings, which were basically built for the space that they needed to be. Yeah, you know, there wasn't a full area, so they just kind of made a triangle as two roads crossed, you know, in a way.
Yeah, so, and I mean, and you know, what I've been trying to point out is that you're right. You refer to our brains, and you can't have a uniform solution to a space. You've got to think contextually about where you are located, where this space has been, where it's going, and not just the physical aspects of space, but everything that stands behind it, you know, from justice, equity, climate change, you know, culture, character.
I mean, you can have crowdsourcing to bring you ideas, but then you're gonna have to get militaristic about it and have just a few people make the decisions of how to move forward with the best idea.
Well, or you indulge in this thing that's, you know, called co-creation, where you mush everyone together and you help inform those who make the decisions in a little better way. And one thing I talk about in the book is I spent 3 days up in northern Sweden about a year ago that I write about. And what they did is they're moving most of a small mining town a couple of miles away because the mine has gone underneath the town over the last 100 years and it's falling in on itself. And so they're creating a new town. And the question is, how do you decide what that town is, and what do you take with to, from the old to the new? And
well, towns kind of popped up because they were accessible. They were by a river, they were by a lake, they were maybe where the railroad or the Roman road passed through.
Right out the door here. Yeah.
It's just been, the last century or so where we decided, well, that place way over there is a great place to start building, and we'll just build a road to it.
Yeah. And then you have to decide, of course, a big function of the planning profession is to to help figure out, once you make that decision, how you're going to get all the necessary services there. And
yes,
that doesn't always work so well, does it? Yeah.
Well, it's lovely to have all the wiring underground instead of on telephone poles. But then, if the wiring needs to be fixed, you have to have a place to get to it to fix it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you have learned to be an expert in fixing. So, right?
Yeah. Nanobots. We'll just send army of nanobots underground to fix things.
That's
we'll
right.
Do it, we'll do it like a game. Basically, it'll be a video game.
Is this the kind of stuff you guys talk about in assembly required, or?
It's where our minds go. Our minds just kind of freeform think and think up ridiculous stuff. And we really had the best time. And the guys, the people that we got to be our contestants are brilliant. I mean, within their own rights. This show was created pre-COVID, and it was going to be in a space where everybody came to the space, and we gave them boxes, and they had to use the materials and the tools within our space. But once we decided that, because of COVID, we're going to have to let everybody use their own working space, it opened up this interesting thing where people, we would send them a box of the same material, but every one of them approached building whatever was going to be in it from a different way, from the stuff that they had in their back shelves to their own personal artistic expertise.
This sounds like the Great British Bake Off or something,
Exactly. I mean, it's
where they're given a problem, and I didn't realize the show was like that. So it's like and they compete.
And we compete. We start off. Each show has 3 competitors, and they're given a 90-minute build, a 90-minute task, and whichever one is built the best, or the best 2 move on, and the third one goes away. Then we give them a 5-day build of something else that they have to incorporate the first build into.
Well, so as I understand it, the philosophy behind this show is somewhat consistent with what we were talking about a moment ago, and that is, it's much more repair and replace and regenerate than it is, build something entirely new. Is that right?
Well, Tim came to it, and I did in my own way. We're stuck at our own homes.
Right.
And we're sitting there and we're looking and going, oh yeah, I should fix that. Oh yeah, I've left that go for a few years. I'm going to get around to that. That needs plastering. That needs, a fix. And you get to the point where you don't want to throw something away. There's something it's perfectly fine if I can find the one little thing that's broken within it. And even though it's only something that's going to cost me, $100, I would rather spend $100 fixing it than replacing it.
And do they get bonus points for being innovative in reuse then?
They do. Within our critiques of it, we design and ingenuity and all those things add up to how we feel, what's the best build.
And so one thing that I'm big on, as we were talking about before, though, is that some of these problems don't necessarily have the same solution, and they're going to be colored by where these folks are operating, where they're coming from, what their backgrounds are. And, so I'm a big context guy. Do you have an example of can you talk about that yet? Maybe you can't.
Oh, you mean within the builds?
Yeah. Can you talk about just generally one of the shows, and what, and whether, whether a guy from Florida had a different solution from a woman from Wyoming or something like that?
Well, we didn't get into big ticket ideas like that. Tim would like to. Tim would love to have a show, deal with how to end homelessness.
Right.
Just a huge concept idea. But everybody that we had on here, they had their own kind of thing that they gravitated towards in their life. One of them was a metal worker. This guy did wonderful, Game of Thrones type metal work. And within the task that we gave them, he built this beautiful layered metal, idea. Whereas the other guy went in a totally different way, went more kind of military top shelf, and made it look very, he was a Marine, an ex-Marine, and he made it look like you could buy this at the Pentagon, so that's kind of what will come out of that.
So how many contestants per show? You have 10 shows.
3 contestants. We did 10 shows, so we had 30 contestants, and each one had to be in their own space, and we had to send out guys with small cameras and video, and sometimes it came down to places that didn't have as good a Wi-Fi. We kept losing them. We had to wait for them to get back and like that. But,
So who decides the winner?
Well, Tim and I do.
Okay.
And our producers. Our producers are in our ear also with things that we might not think of on the fly, which is, nice. It's a team effort. But Tim has very different, definite ideas about style and content. And that I wrote a book also. I wrote a book on the remodel of my home.
Right. I know you did. Yeah. And the
subtitle was How I Remodeled My Home for Just Under 3 times the Original Bid.
Right.
And that's really how it happened. I mean, as you build, you find different things you want to do along the way, along the journey.
Yeah.
And there is such a thing as remodeling stress syndrome, which a lot of couples get entangled in, divorced. They find out, I can't believe you want purple there instead of the yellow ochre I was envisioning.
Right.
So everybody's sense of style, sense of themselves kind of gets, manifested, incorporated into their feathering of their nest.
Right. And so my sense is you cannot ignore that.
No, you can't.
Fundamental human attribute, because and when you factor it out to the community level, that's the same stuff that goes on. And so when you have, say, a consultant come in and say, well, we think you should do this because we did this there, and there's not the opportunity to really listen to the various inputs, it's not going to work out so well, I think, Well, you
also have, what we find in some of our housing developments, some of our areas where we have built a specific style or whatever, and people move there and then they find out, I can't change the color of my house. I can't put an asphalt shingle, because everybody else is tile, or vice versa. There are restrictions within like little tiny communities. So when you talk about cities and towns, like you said, there are wonderful main streets that empty out into something that just stops being this idyllic little main street.
So what's your favorite city, given all the places you've acted, and what's the attribute of a good city for you as an actor coming to town?
I loved New York. I mean, I lived in Manhattan for 11 years. I loved it. And you talk about, you know, being disappointed. New York never disappointed me. I mean, you would walk out of one neighborhood into another, and it was like, oh, so that's, you know, I mean, you can go and have dinner in Chinatown, walk across Canal Street, and all of a sudden you're in Little Italy for dessert. You walk a little further up, and boom, you're in the Village. You know, it's like New York did not disappoint. I loved exploring that town. The same with London. I loved exploring London. One little area kind of morphed into another. However, you know, when you get into England, you've got a lot of space that got, you know, ruined in the war, that had to be rebuilt, and maybe rebuilt quickly with the money at hand. And so you've got these areas that that aren't as romantic, but they're functional. You know, people are able to live there, but you've kind of disrupted the flow of history, of something, you know, because there was a huge reset, which happened to be World War II.
Well, so what I've learned from this conversation is that Richard Karn is a great urbanist, because you're.
Well, I've lived in a lot of different towns for, you know, short periods of time. Like when I would go and do a play in, say, Louisville or Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio was hysterical, because I get there and I'm living, you know, within walking distance of Germantown. And Germantown, you know, just you have these images of, well, it must be very interesting. And you go in there and it's kind of, you know, Tudor-esque and German, like, but I go into the bar and I go, so what are your beers? What do you got for me? And, you know, the bartender looks at me and goes, well, I got Bud Light. I got Miller Lite. You got what? You're a Germantown. How can you not have, like, you know, amazing beers on tap?
Yeah.
And a year to the day, I come back and they had 3 or 4 tapped beers. So I think I nudged that along.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect. Yeah. You were in Germantown. You expected to see something that you didn't see, and you were upset.
I was.
And so, you know, maybe.
Well, I mean, if I went to a real Germantown, they wouldn't have had Bud Light and Miller Lite.
Right.
You know, so call yourself, be succinct.
Well put.
Now, Disney did this. I mean, it started out with Disneyland, and each land, you had Fantasyland, you had Frontierland, you had all these different lands that he imagined. And then he built that out into Epcot, where he went to France, he went to Germany, he went to Mexico, and you had these idyllic little areas that were what you expected to see in each one.
Exactly. And you know what? I've found that that's what people want to see on social media. You know, if I put up a photo of a shopping mall or a parking lot that's every bit as offensive as its American equivalent.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
Why would I do that? They want to see, you know, the Queen.
Yeah.
They want to see.
I don't want to see a bowl of Rice Krispies. I want to see bangers and eggs. You know, you talk about yourself and you talk about your work as being a little too academic or you know, hard to understand. I don't think so, Chuck. You have put ideas out there for people to expand upon.
Oh my God. I could not be more flattered. Amazing. The homeroom's going to love that. It just brings it all back. Here we are.
I should have been a writer.
Yeah. I should have been an actor.
You know, I lived in London back in the 70s. It was a long time ago. It was before a lot of this urban renewal. You and
Hugh Grant and Notting Hill.
Well, I played golf with Hugh Grant. He's a very competitive guy.
Good. Best of luck with the show and stuff. We'll, I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Okay, buddy.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this expanded approach to place parts, which we'll do again in the future with other people who provide different perspectives on how places change and how we might think about incorporating the local and hyper-local in
emerging from the pandemic and ongoing issues of urban change. In case you hadn't figured it out, Rick and I go way back to high school, where we were in Seattle in the same homeroom every morning during our senior year. I suppose it's another issue about how relationships carry forward and how places that were once very close have become virtual over time.